Boston. And I stand there all alone on New Year's Eve, buck naked, drenched in champagne, looking at a bunch of strangers, looking at them, looking at me, looking at them, and I say, "Oh, fine, Mom. How's Washington? Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light midday or night, and I slip on it every time. Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light midday or night, and I slip on it every time, yeah. So I guess the party line is I followed you up here. Well, I don't know about that. Mainly because knowing about that would involve knowing about some pathetic, ridiculous, and absolutely true things about myself. I'd rather not admit to right now. I woke up at 3 a.m. with the radio on, that Gladys Knight and the Pip song on, about how she'd rather live in his world with him than live in her own world alone. And I laid there, head spinning, trying to fall asleep, and I thought to myself, "Oh, Gladys, girl, I love you, but oh, get a life! Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light midday or night, and I slip on it every time. Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light midday or night, and I slip on it every time. Time, time, time. Time, time, time. Time, time, time. Time, time, time.
Year of the DEPEND Adult Undergarment. Hal. Hey, Hal. Yes, Mario. Are you asleep? Boo-boo. We've been over this. I can't be asleep if we're talking. That's what I thought. Happy to reassure you. Boy, were you on today. Boy, did you ever make that guy look sick. When he hit that one down the line and you got it and fell down and hit that drop volley, Pamula said the guy looked like he was going to be sick all over the net, he said. Boo, I kicked the kid's ass is all, end of story. I don't think it's good to rehash it when I've kicked somebody's ass. It's like a dignity thing. I think we should just let it sort of lie in state quietly, speaking of which. Hey, Hal. Hey, Hal. It's late, Mario. It's sleepy time. Close your eyes and think fuzzy thoughts. That's what the moms always says, too. Always work for me, Boo. Hey, I think fuzzy thoughts all the time. You let me room with you because you feel sorry for me. Boo, I'm not even going to dignify that. I'll regard it as like a warning sign. You always get petulant when you don't get enough sleep. And here we are, seeing petulance already on the western horizon, right here. When I asked if you were asleep, I was going to ask if you felt like you believed in God today, out there, when you were so on, making that guy look sick. Oh, this again. Really don't think midnight in a totally dark room with me so tired my hair hurts and drills in 6 short hours is the time and place to get into this, Mario. You ask me this once a week. You never say is why. So tonight, to shush you, how about if I say I have administrative bones to pick with God, Boo? I will say God seems to have a kind of laid-back management style I'm not crazy about. I'm pretty much anti-death. God looks by all accounts to be pro-death. So I'm not seeing how we can get together on this issue, he and I, Boo. You're talking about since himself passed away. See? You never say. I do too say. I just did. I just didn't happen to say what you wanted to hear, Boo-Boo, that's all. There's a difference. I don't get how you couldn't feel like you believed today, out there. It was so right there. You moved like you totally believed. How do you feel inside? Not, Mario, you and I are mysterious to each other. We countenance each other from either side, of some unbridgeable difference on this issue. Let's lie very quietly and ponder this. Hal? Hey, Hal. I'm going to propose that I will tell you a joke, Boo, on the condition that afterward you shush and let me sleep. Is it a good one? Mario, what do you get when you cross an insomniac, an unwilling agnostic, and a dyslexic? You get somebody who stays up all night torturing himself mentally over the question of whether or not there's a dog. Oh, that's a good one. Shush. Hey, Hal, what's an insomniac? Somebody who rooms with you, kid, that's for sure. Hey, Hal. Hal, how come the moms never cried when himself passed away? I cried, and you, even CT cried. I saw him personally cry. You listened to Tosca over and over and cried and said you were sad. We all were. Hey, Hal, did the mom seem like she got happier after himself passed away? I mean, to you? It seems like she got happier. She seems even taller. She stopped traveling everywhere all the time for this and that thing, the corporate grammar thing, the library protest thing. Now she never goes anywhere, Boo. Now she's got the headmaster's house and her office and the tunnel in between and never leaves the grounds. She's a worse workaholic than she ever was, and more obsessive-compulsive, too. When's the last time you saw a dust mote in that house? Hey, Hal! Now she's just an agoraphobic workaholic and obsessive-compulsive. This strikes you as happification? Her eyes are better. They don't seem as sunk in. They look better. She laughs at CT way more than she laughed at himself. She laughs from lower down inside. She laughs more. Her jokes she tells are better ones than yours, even now, a lot of the time. How come she never got sad? She did get sad, Boo-Boo. She just got sad in her way instead of yours and mine. She got sad. I'm pretty sure. Hell, you remember how the staff lowered the flag to half-mast out front by the portcullis here after it happened? Do you remember that? And it goes to half-mast every year at convocation. Remember the flag, Boo? Hey, Hal! Don't cry, Boo-Boo. Remember the flag only halfway up the pole? Boo-Boo, there are 2 ways to lower a flag to half-mast. Are you listening? Because no shit, I really have to sleep here in a second, so listen. One way to lower the flag to half-mast is just to lower the flag. There's another way, though. You can also just raise the pole. You can raise the pole to like twice its original height. You get me? You understand what I mean? Mario? Hell, she's plenty sad, I bet. At 20:10 hours on 1 April YDAU, the medical attaché is still watching the unlabeled entertainment cartridge. October, year of the DEPEND Adult Undergarment. For Oren in Condensa, number 71, morning is the soul's night. The day's worst time, psychically. He cranks the condo's AC way down at night and still most mornings wakes up soaked, fetally curled and tuned in that kind of psychic darkness where you're dreading whatever you think of. Hal Incandenza's brother Oren wakes up alone at 7:30 hours amid a damp scent of ambush, and on the other side's dented pillow a note with phone number and vital data in a loopy schoolgirlish hand. There's also ambush on the note. His side of the bed is soaked. Oren makes honey toast, standing barefoot at the kitchen counter, wearing briefs and an old Academy sweatshirt with the arms cut off, squeezing honey from the head of a plastic bear. The floor is so cold it hurts his feet, but the double-pane window over the sink is hot to the touch. The beastly Metro Phoenix October AM heat just outside. Home with the team, no matter how high the AC or how thin the sheet, Oren wakes with his own impression sweated darkly into the bed beneath him, slowly drying all day to a white, salty outline just slightly off from the week's other faint, dried outlines, so his fetal-shaped, fossilized image is fanned out across his side of the bed like a deck of cards, just overlapping, like an acid trail or timed exposure. The heat just past the glass doors tightens his scalp. He takes breakfast out to a white iron table by the condo complex central pool and tries to eat it there, in the heat, the coffee not steaming or cooling. He sits there in dumb animal pain. He has a mustache of sweat. A bright beach ball floats and bumps against one side of the pool. The sun like a sneaky keyhole view of hell. No one else out near. The complex is a ring with the pool and deck and jacuzzi in the center. Heat shimmers off the deck like fumes from fuel. There is that mirage thing where the extreme heat makes the dry deck look wet with fuel. Oren can hear cartridge viewers going from behind closed windows. That aerobics show every morning, and also someone playing an organ, and the older woman who won't ever smile back at him in the apartment next to his doing operatic scales, muffled by drapes and sun curtains and double panes. The jacuzzi chugs and foams. The note from last night's subject is on violet bond, once folded and with a circle of darker violet dead center where the subject's perfume spritzer had hit it. The only interesting thing about the script, but also depressing, is that every single circle, O's, D's, P's, the numbers 6 and 8, is darkened in, while the I's are dotted, not with circles, but with tiny little Valentine hearts, which are not darkened in. Oren reads the note while he eats toast that's mainly an excuse for the honey. He uses his smaller right arm to eat and drink. His oversized left arm and big left leg remain at rest at all times in the morning. A breeze sends the beach ball skating all the way across the blue pool to the other side, and Oren watches its noiseless glide. The white iron tables have no umbrellas, and you can tell where the sun is without looking. You can feel right where it is on your body and project from there. The ball moves tentatively back out toward the middle of the pool and then stays there, not even bobbing. The same small breeze make the rotted palms along the condominium complex's stone walls rustle and click, and a couple of fronds detach and spiral down, hitting the deck with a slap. All the plants out here are malevolent, heavy, and sharp. The parts of the palms above the fronds are tufted in sick stuff like coconut hair. Roaches and other things live in the trees. Rats, maybe. Loathsome high-altitude critters of all kinds. All the plants either spiny or meaty. Cacti in queer, tortured shapes. The tops of the palms like Rod Stewart's hair from days gone by. Oren returned with the team from the Chicago game 2 nights ago, red-eye. He knows that he and the place kicker are the only two starters who are not still in terrible pain physically from the beating. The day before they left, so like 5 days ago, Orrin was out by himself in the jacuzzi by the pool late in the day, caring for the leg, sitting in the radiant heat and bloody late daylight with the leg in the jacuzzi, absently squeezing the tennis ball he still absently squeezes out of habit, watching the jacuzzi funnel and bubble and foam around the leg. And out of nowhere, a bird had all of a sudden fallen into the jacuzzi with a flat matter-of-fact plop. Out of nowhere. Out of the wide empty sky. Nothing overhung the jacuzzi but sky. The bird seemed to have just had a coronary or something in flight and died and fallen out of the empty sky and landed dead in the jacuzzi right by the leg. He brought his sunglasses down onto the bridge of his nose with a finger and looked at it. It was an undistinguished kind of bird, not a predator. Like a wren, maybe. It seems like no way could it have been a good sign. The dead bird bobbed and barrel rolled in the foam, sucked under 1 second and reappearing the next, creating an illusion of continued flight. Orrin had inherited none of the mom's phobias about disorder, hygiene. Not crazy about bugs, though, roaches. But he just sat there squeezing the ball, looking at the bird without a conscious thought in his head. By the next morning, waking up curled and entombed, it seemed like it had to have been a bad sign, though. Orrin now always gets the shower so hot it's to where he can just barely stand it. The condo's whole bathroom is done in this kind of minty yellow tile he didn't choose, maybe chosen by the free safety who lived here before the Cardinals sent New Orleans the free safety, 2 reserve guards and cash for Orrin and Cadenza, punter. And no matter how many times he has the Terminix people out, there are still the enormous roaches that come out of the bathroom drains. Sewer roaches, according to Terminix. Blattaria implacablusa or something. Really huge roaches. Armored vehicle type bugs. Totally black with Kevlar type cases, the works. And fearless, raised in the Hobbesian sewers down there. Boston's and New Orleans' little brown roaches were bad enough, but you could at least come in and turn on a light and they'd run for their lives. These Southwest sewer roaches, you turn on the light and they just look up at you from the tile like, you got a problem? Orrin stomped on one of them only once that had some hellishly up out of the drain in the shower when he was in there showering, going out naked, putting shoes on, coming in and trying to conventionally squash it, and the result was explosive. There's still material from that one time in the tile grouting. It seems unremovable. Roach innards. Sickening. Throwing the shoes away was preferable to looking at the sole to clean it. Now he keeps big glass tumblers in the bathroom, and when he turns on the light and sees a roach, he puts a glass down over it, trapping it. After a couple days, the glass is all steamed up, and the roach has asphyxiated and messlessly, and Orrin discards both the roach and the tumbler in separate sealed ziplocks in the dumpster complex by the golf course up the street. The yellow tile floor of the bathroom is sometimes a little obstacle course of glasses with huge roaches dying inside stoically, just sitting there, the glasses gradually steaming up with roach dioxide. The whole thing makes Orrin sick. Now he figures the hotter the shower's water, the less chance any small armored vehicle is going to feel like coming out of the drain while he's in there. Sometimes they're in the bowl of the toilet first thing in the a.m., dog paddling, trying to get to the side and climb up. He's also not crazy about spiders, though more like unconsciously. He's never come any place close to the conscious horror himself had somehow developed about the Southwest black widows and their chaotic webs. The widows are all over the place, both here and Tucson, spottable on all but the coldest nights, their dusty webs without any kind of pattern, clotting just about any right-angled place that's dim or out of the way. Terminix's toxins are more effective on the widows. Orrin has them out monthly. He's on like a subscription plan over at Terminix. Orrin's special conscious horror, besides heights and the early morning, is roaches. There had been parts of Metro Boston near the bay he'd refused to go to as a child. Roaches give him the holding phantodes. The parishes around New Orleans had been having a spate or outbreak of a certain Latin origin breed of sinister tropical flying roaches that were small and timid but could fucking fly, and that kept being found swarming on New Orleans infants at night in their cribs, especially infants in like tenements or squalor, and that reportedly fed on the mucus in the baby's eyes, some special sort of optical mucus, the stuff of fucking nightmares, mobile flying roaches that wanted to get at your eyes as an infant and were reportedly blinding them. Parents come in the ghastly AM tenement light and find their infants blind, like a dozen blinded infants that last summer. And it was during this spate or nightmarish outbreak, plus July flooding, that sent over a dozen nightmarish dead bodies from a hilltop graveyard, sliding all gravy blue down the incline. Orrin and two teammates had their townhouse on, in suburban Chalmette, shedding limbs and innards all the way down the hillside's mud, and one morning, coming to rest against the post of their roadside mailbox, when Orrin came out for the morning paper that Orrin had his agent put out the trade feelers, and so, to the glass canyons and merciless light of Metro Phoenix in a kind of desiccated circle near the Tucson of his own father's desiccated youth. It's the mornings after the Spider and Heights dreams that are the most painful. That it takes sometimes 3 coffees and 2 showers and sometimes a run to loosen the grip on his soul's throat. And these post-dream mornings are even worse if he wakes unalone. If the previous night's subject is still there, wanting to twitter or to cuddle and like spoon, asking what exactly is the story with the foggy inverted tumblers on the bathroom floor, commenting on his night sweats clattering around in the kitchen, making kippers or bacon or something even more hideous and unhoneyed he's supposed to eat with post-coital male gusto, the ones who have this thing about, they call it feeding my man, wanting a man who can barely keep down AM honey toast to eat with male gusto, elbows out and shoveling, making little noises. Even when alone, able to uncurl alone and sit slowly up and wring out the sheet and go to the bathroom, these darkest mornings start days that Orrin can't even bring himself for hours to think about how he'll get through the day. These worst mornings with cold floors and hot windows and merciless light, the sole certainty that the day will have to be not traversed but sort of climbed vertically. And then that going to sleep again at the end of it will be like falling again off something tall and sheer. So now his own eye mucus is secure in the desert southwest. But the bad dreams have gotten worse since the trade to this blasted area himself had fled long ago as an unhappy youngster. As a nod to Orrin's own unhappy youth, all the dreams seem to open briefly with some sort of competitive tennis situation. Last night's had started with a wide-angle shot of Orrin on a hard-true court, waiting to receive serve from someone vague, some academy person, Ross Reed maybe, or good old M. Bain, or gray-toothed Walt Flechette, now a teaching pro in the Carolinas. When the dream screen tightens on him and abruptly dissolves to the blank, dark rose color of eyes closed against bright light, and there's the ghastly feeling of being submerged and not knowing which way to head for the surface and air, and after some interval the dream's Orrin struggles up from this kind of visual suffocation to find his mother's head, Mrs. Avril M.T. Incandenzas, the mom's disconnected head, attached face to face to his own fine head, strapped tight to his face somehow by a wraparound system of VS Hypro top-shelf lamb gut string from his academy racket's own face. So that no matter how frantically Orrin tries to move his head or shake it side to side or twist up his face or roll his eyes, he's still staring into and somehow through his mother's face. As if the mom's head was some sort of overtight helmet Orrin can't wrestle his way out of. In the dream, it's understandably vital to Orrin that he disengage his head from the phylacterish bind of his mother's disembodied head, and he cannot. Last night's subject's note indicates that at some point last night, Oren had clutched her head with both hands and tried to sort of stiff-arm her, though not in an ungentle or complaining way, the note, not the stiff-arm. The apparent amputation of the mom's head from the rest of the mom's appears in the dream to be clean and surgically neat. There is no evidence of a stump or any kind of nubbin of neck even, and it is as if the base of the round, pretty head had been sealed and also sort of rounded off, so that her head is a large living ball, a globe with a face attached to his own head's face. The subject, after Bain's sister, but before the one just before this one, with the ambush scent and the heart over eyes, the previous subject had been a sallowly pretty Arizona State developmental psychology grad student with 2 kids and outrageous alimony and pensions for sharp jewelry, refrigerated chocolate, interlace educational cartridges, and professional athletes who thrashed in their sleep. Not real bright. She thought the figure he traced without thinking on her bare flank after sex was the numeral 8, to give you an idea. Their last morning together, right before he'd mailed her child an expensive toy and then had his phone number changed, he'd awakened from a night of horror show dreams, woke up with an abrupt fetal spasm, unrefreshed and benighted of soul, his eyes wobbling, and his wet silhouette on the bottom sheet like a coroner's chalk outline. He woke to find the subject up and sitting up against the reading pillow, wearing his sleeveless Academy sweatshirt and sipping hazelnut espresso, and watching, on the cartridge viewing system that occupied half the bedroom's south wall, something horrific called Interlace Educational Cartridges in conjunction with CBC Educational Programming Matrix presents Schizophrenia, Mind or Body? And had to lie there, moist and paralyzed, curled fetal on his own sweat shadow, and watch on the viewer a pale young guy about Hal's age, with copper stubble and a red cowlick and flat, blank, affectless black doll's eyes, stare into space, stage left, while a brisk Albertan voiceover explained that Fenton here was a dyed-in-the-wool paranoid schizophrenic who believed that radioactive fluids were invading his skull and that hugely complex high-tech type machines had been specially designed and programmed to pursue him without cease until they caught him and made brutal sport of it and buried him alive. It was an old, late millennial CBC public interest Canadian news documentary, digitally sharpened and redisseminated under the Interlace imprimatur. Interlace could get kind of seedy and low rent during early morning off hours in terms of spontaneous disseminations. And so, but since the old CBC documentary's thesis was turning out pretty clearly to be schizophrenia, body, the voiceover evinced great clipped good cheer as it explained that, well, yes, poor old Fenton here was more or less hopeless as an extra-institutional functioning unit, but that on the upside, science could at least give his existence some sort of meaning by studying him very carefully to help learn how schizophrenia manifested itself in the human body's brain. That, in other words, with the aid of cutting-edge positron emission topography, or PET technology, since supplanted wholly by invasive digitals, or, and here's the developmental psychology graduate student mutter to herself, watching rapt over her cup, unaware that Oren's paralytically awake, they could scan and study how different parts of poor old Fenton's dysfunctional brain emitted positrons in a whole different topography than your average hale and hearty, non-delusional, God-fearing Albertan's brain, advancing science by injecting test subject Fenton here with a special blood-brain barrier penetrating radioactive dye and then sticking him in the rotating body-sized receptacle of a PET scanner on the viewer. It's an enormous gray metal machine that looks like something co-designed by James Cameron and Fritz Lang. And now have a look at this Fenton fella's eyes as he starts to get the gist of what the voiceover is saying. And in a terse old public TV cut, they now showed subject Fenton in 5-point canvas restraints, whipping his copper-haired head from side to side as guys in mint green surgical masks and caps inject him with radioactive fluids through a turkey baster-sized syringe. Then good old Fenton's eyes bugging out in total foreseen horror as he's rolled toward the huge gray PET device and slid like an unrisen loaf into the thing's open maw until only his decay-colored sneakers are in view, and the body-sized receptacle rotates the test subject counterclockwise with brutal speed so that the old sneakers point up and then left and then down and then right and then up faster and faster, the machine's blurbs and tweets not even coming close to covering Fenton's entombed howls as his worst delusional fears came true in digital stereo, and you could hear the last surviving bits of his functional dye-permeated mind being screamed out of him for all time as the viewer digitally superimposed an image of Fenton's ember-red and neutron-blue brain in the lower right corner, where interlaces time-temp functions usually appear, and the brisk voiceover gave capsule histories of first paranoid schizophrenia and then PET, with Oren lying there, slit-eyed, wet and neuralgic with AM dread, wishing the subject would put her own clothes and sharp jewelry on and take the rest of her Toblerone out of the freezer and go, so he could go to the bathroom and get yesterday's asphyxiated roaches into an EWD dumpster before the dumpster's all filled for the day, and decide what kind of expensive present to mail the subject's kid. And then the matter of the dead bird, out of nowhere. And then news of pressure from the Arizona Cardinal administration to cooperate with some sort of insipid-type personality profile series of interviews with some profiler from Moment magazine, with personal backgroundish questions to be answered in some blandly sincere team PR way. The unexamined stress of which drives him to start calling Hallie again, reopen that whole Pandora's box of worms. Oren also shaves in the shower, face red with heat, wreathed in steam, by feel shaving upward with south to north strokes, as he was taught. Year of the Depend Adult Undergarment. Here's Hal in Condensa, age 17, with his little brass one-hitter getting covertly high in the Enfield Tennis Academy's underground pump room and exhaling palely into an industrial exhaust fan. It's the sad little interval after afternoon matches and conditioning, but before the Academy's communal supper, Hal is by himself down there, and nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. Hal likes to get high in secret, but a bigger secret is that he's as attached to the secrecy as he is to getting high. A one-hitter is sort of like a long FDR-type cigarette holder whose end is packed with a pinch of good dope, gets hot and is hard on the mouth, the brass ones especially, but one-hitters have the advantage of efficiency. Every particle of ignited pot gets inhaled. There's none of the incidental second-hand type smoke from a party bowl's big load, and Hal can take every iota way down deep and hold his breath forever, so that even his exhalations are no more than slightly pale and sick-sweet smelling. Total utilization of available resources equal lack of publicly detectable waste. The Academy's tennis court's lungs pump room is underground and accessible only by tunnel. ETA is abundantly and branchingly tunneled. This is by design. Plus, one-hitters are small, which is good because, let's face it, anything you use to smoke higher rosin dope is going to stink. A bong is big, and its stink is going to be like commensurately big. Plus, you have the foul bong water to deal with. Pipes are smaller and at least portable, but they always come with only a multi-hit party ball that disperses non-utilized smoke over a wide area. A one-hitter can be wastelessly employed, then allowed to cool, wrapped in two baggies, and then further wrapped and sealed in a Ziploc, and then enclosed in two sports socks in a gear bag, along with the lighter and eye drops and mint pellets and the little film case of dope itself, and it's highly portable and odor-free and basically totally covert. As far as Hal knows, colleagues Michael Pemulis, Jim Struck, Bridget C. Boone, Jim Trolch, Ted Schacht, Trevor Exford, and possibly Kyle D. Coyle and Tall Paul Shaw, and remotely possibly Franny Unwin, all know Hal gets regularly, covertly high. It's also not impossible that Bernadette Longley knows, actually, and of course the unpleasant Kay Freer always has suspicions of all kinds, and Hal's brother Mario knows a thing or two, but that's it in terms of public knowledge. But even though Pemulis and Struck and Boone and Trolch and Exford, and occasionally in a sort of medicinal or touristic way, Stice and Schacht all are known to get high also, Hal has actually gotten actively high only with Pemulis on the rare occasions he's gotten high with anybody else, as in person, which he avoids. He'd forgot Ortho, the darkness, Stice of Partridge KS, knows. And Hal's oldest brother, Orrin, mysteriously, even long distance, seems to know more than he's coming right out and saying, unless Hal's reading more into some of the phone comments than are there. Hal's mother, Mrs. Avril Incandenza, and her adoptive brother, Dr. Charles Tavis, the current ETA headmaster, both know Hal drinks alcohol sometimes, like on weekend nights with Trolch or maybe Axford down the hill at clubs on Commonwealth Avenue. The Unexamined Life has its notorious blind bouncer night every Friday where they card you on the honor system. Mrs. Avril Incandenza isn't crazy about the idea of Hal drinking, mostly because the way his father had drunk when alive, and reportedly his father's own father before him in Arizona and California. But Hal's academic precocity, and especially his late competitive success on the junior circuit, make it clear that he's able to handle whatever modest amounts she's pretty sure he consumes. There's no way someone can seriously abuse a substance and perform at top scholarly and athletic levels, the ETA psych counselor Dr. Rusk assures her, especially the high-level athletic part, and Avril feels it's important that a concerned but unsmothering single parent know when to let go somewhat and let the too high functioning of her 3 sons make their own possible mistakes and learn from their own valid experience, no matter how much the secret worry about mistakes tears her gizzard out, the mother's. And Charles supports whatever personal decisions she makes in conscience about her children. And God knows she'd rather have Hal having a few glasses of beer every so often than absorbing God alone knows what sort of esoteric designer compounds with reptilian Michael Pemulis and trail of slime-leaving James Struck, both of whom give Avril a howling case of the maternal fan toads. And ultimately, she's told Doctors Rusk and Tavis she'd rather have Hal abide in the security of the knowledge that his mother trusts him, that she's trusting and supportive and doesn't judge or gizzard tear or wring her fine hands over his having, for instance, a glass of Canadian ale with friends every now and again, and so works tremendously hard to hide her maternal dread of his possibly ever drinking like James himself or James's father, also that Hal might enjoy the security of feeling that he can be upfront with her about issues like drinking and not feel he has to hide anything from her under any circumstances. Dr. Tavis and Dolores Rusk have privately discussed the fact that not least among the phobic stressors Avril suffers so uncomplainingly with is a black phobic dread of hiding or secrecy in all possible forms with respect to her sons. Avril and CT know nothing about Hal's penchants for high rosin, Bob Hope, and underground absorption, which fact Hal obviously likes a lot on some level, though he's never given much thought to why he likes it so much. ETA's hilltop grounds are traversable by tunnel. Avril, for example, who never leaves the grounds anymore, rarely travels above ground, willing to hunch to take the off-tunnels between Headmaster's house and her office next to Charles Tavis's in the Community and Administration Building, a pink-bricked, white-pillared Neo-Georgian thing that Hal's brother Mario says looks like a cube that has swallowed a ball too big for its stomach. 2 sets of elevators and 1 of stairs run between the lobby reception area and administrative offices on ComAd's first floor, and the weight room, sauna, and the locker shower areas on the sublevel below it. One large tunnel of elephant-colored cement leads from just off the boys' showers to the mammoth laundry room below the west courts, and two smaller tunnels radiate from the sauna area south and east to the sub-basements of the smaller spherocubular proto-Georgian buildings housing classrooms and sub-dormitories B and D. These two basements and smaller tunnels often serve as student storage space and hallways between various prorectors' private rooms. Then two even smaller tunnels navigable by any adult willing to assume a kind of knuckle-dragging simian posture in turn connect each of the sub-basements to the former optical and film development facilities of Leaf and Ogilvy and the late Dr. James O. Incandenza, now deceased, below and just west of the headmaster's house, from which facilities there's also a fair diameter tunnel that goes straight to the lowest level of the community and administration building. But its functions have gradually changed over 4 years, and it's now too full of exposed wiring and hot water pipes and heating ducts to be really passable. And to the offices of the physical plant, almost directly beneath the center row of ETA outdoor tennis courts, which offices and custodial lounge are in turn connected to ETA's lung storage and pump rooms via a targeted tunnel hastily constructed by the Testar All-Weather Inflatable Structures Corporation, which together with the folks over at ATH SCME Industrial Air Displacement Devices erects and services the inflatable dendriurethane dome, known as the lung, that covers the middle row of courts for the winter indoor season. The crude little rough-sided tunnel between plant and pump is traversable only via all-fours type crawling and is essentially unknown to staff and administration, popular only with the Academy's smaller kids' tunnel club, as well as with certain adolescents with strong secret incentive to crawl on all fours. The lung storage room is basically impassable from March through November because it's full of intricately folded dendriurethane lung material and dismantled sections of flexible ducting and fan blades, etc. The pump room is right next to it, though you have to crawl back out into the tunnel to get it. On the engineering diagrams, the pump rooms may be about 20 meters directly beneath the centermost courts in the middle row of courts, and looks like a kind of spider hanging upside down. An unfenestrated oval chamber with 6 man-sized curved ducts radiating up and out to exit points on the grounds above, and the pump room has 6 radial openings, one for each upcurving duct, 3 2-meter vents with huge turbine-bladed exhaust fans bolted into their grills, and 3 more 2Ms with reversed ATHS CME intake fans that allow air from the ground above to be sucked down and around the room and up into the 3 exhaust vents. The pump room is essentially like a pulmonary organ or the epicenter of a massive 6-vectored wind tunnel, and when activated roars like a banshee that slammed its hand in a door, though the PR is in full legit operation only when the lung is up, usually November through March. The intake fans pull ground-level winter air down into and around the room and through the 3 exhaust fans and up the outtake ducts into networks of pneumatic tubing in the lung sides and dome. It's the pressure of the moving air that keeps the fragile lung inflated. When the court's lung is down and stored, Hal will descend and walk and then hunch his way in to make sure nobody's in the physical plant quarters. Then he'll hunch and crawl to the PR, gear bag in his teeth, and activate just one of the big exhaust fans and get secretly high and exhale palely through its blades into the vent so that any possible odor is blown through an outtake duct and expelled through the grilled hole on the west side of the west courts, a threaded hole with a flange where brisk white-suited ATHS CME guys will attach some of the lungs' arterial pneumatic tubing at some point soon when Stitt et al. On staff decide the real weather has moved past enduring for outdoor tennis. During winter months, when any expelled odor would get ducted up into the lung and hang there conspicuous, Hal mostly goes into a remote sub-dormitory lavatory and climbs onto a toilet in a stall and exhales into the grill of one of the little exhaust fans in the ceiling. But this routine lacks a certain intricate subterranean covered drama. It's another reason why Hal dreads Interdependence Day and the approach of the Whataburger Classic and Thanksgiving and unendurable weather and the erection of the lung. Recreational drugs are more or less traditional at any U.S. secondary school, maybe because of the unprecedented tensions, post-latency and puberty and angst and impending adulthood, etc., to help manage the intra-psychic storms, etc. Since the place's inception, there's always been a certain percentage of the high-caliber adolescent players at ETA who manage their internal weathers chemically. Much of this is good, clean, temporary fun. But a traditionally smaller and harder core set tends to rely on personal chemistry to manage ETA's special demands. Dexedrine or low-volt methadone before matches, and benzodiazepines to come back down after matches with mudslice or blue flames at some understanding, Calm Ave night spot, or beers and bongs in some discreet academy corner at night to short-circuit the up and down cycle, or mushrooms, or X, or something from the mild designer class, or maybe occasionally a little Black Star whenever there's a match and demand-free weekend to basically short out the whole motherboard and blow out all the circuits and slowly recover and be almost neurologically reborn and start the gradual cycle all over again. This circular routine, if your basic wiring's okay to begin with, can work surprisingly well throughout adolescence and sometimes into one's early 20s before it starts to creep up on you. But to some ETAs, not just Hal and Cadenza by any means, are involved with recreational substances is the point. Like, who isn't at some life stage in the USA and interdependent regions in these troubled times for the most part? Though a decent percentage of ETA students aren't at all, i.e. involved. Some persons can give themselves away to an ambitious pursuit and have that be all to giving themselves away to something they need to do. Though sometimes this changes as the players get older and the pursuit more stress-fraught. American experience seems to suggest that people are virtually unlimited in their need to give themselves away on various levels. Some just prefer to do it in secret. An enrolled student-athlete's use of alcohol or illicit chemicals is cause for immediate expulsion, according to ETA's admissions catalog. But the ETA staff tends to have a lot more important stuff on its plate than policing kids who've already given themselves away to an ambitious competitive pursuit. The administrative attitude under first Jameson Cadenza and then Charles Tavis is like, why would anybody who wanted to compromise his faculties chemically even come here to ETA, where the whole point is to stress and stretch your faculties along multiple vectors? And since it's the alumni prorectors who have the most direct supervisory contact with the kids, and since most of the prorectors themselves are depressed or traumatized about not making it into the show and having to come back to ETA and live in decent but subterranean rooms off the tunnels and work as assistant coaches and teach laughable elective classes, which is what the 8 ETA prorectors do when they're not off playing satellite tournaments or trying to make it through the qualifying rounds of some serious money event. So they're morose and low on morale and feel bad about themselves, often as a rule, and so also not all that surprisingly tend to get high now and then themselves. Though in a less covert or exuberant fashion than the hardcore students' chemical cadre. But so given all, this is not hard to see why internal drug enforcement at ETA tends to be flaccid. The other nice thing about the pump room is the way it's connected by tunnel to the prorector's rows of housing units, which means men's rooms, which means Hal can crawl, hunch, and tiptoe into an unoccupied men's room and brush his teeth with his portable Oral-B and wash his face and apply eye drops and Old Spice and a plug of wintergreen Kodiak and then saunter back to the sauna area and ascend to ground level looking and smelling right as rain. Because when he gets high, he develops a powerful obsession with having nobody, not even the neurochemical cadre, know he's high. This obsession is almost irresistible in its force. The amount of organization and toiletry lugging he has to do to get secretly high in front of a subterranean outtake vent in the pre-supper gap would make a lesser man quail. Hal has no idea why this is or whence this obsession with the secrecy of it. He broods on it abstractly sometimes when high. This no one must know thing, it's not fear per se, fear of discovery. Beyond that, it all gets too abstract and twined up to lead to anything Hal's brooding. Like most North Americans of his generation, Hal tends to know way less about why he feels certain ways about the objects and pursuits he's devoted to than he does about the objects and pursuits themselves. It's hard to say for sure whether this is even exceptionally bad, this tendency. At 1500 hours, 2 April, the medical attaché's wife is just leaving the Mount Auburn Total Fitness Center, having played 5-6 game pro sets in her little Mid-East diplomatic wife tennis circle's weekly round robin, then hung around the special Silver Key members' lounge with the other ladies, unwrapping her face and hair and playing Nargis and all smoking keef and making extremely delicate and oblique fun of their husband's sexual idiosyncrasies, laughing softly with their hands over their mouths. The medical attaché at their apartment is still viewing the unlabeled cartridge, which he has rewound to the beginning several times, and then configured for a recursive loop. He sits there, attached to a congealed supper, watching at 0:20 hours, having now wet both his pants and the special recliner. 18 in May, Mario Incandenz's designated function around Enfield Tennis Academy is filming. Sometimes during AM drills or PM matches, he'll be assigned by Coach Stitt et al. To set up an old camcorder or whatever video stuff's to hand on a tripod and record a certain area of court, videotaping different kids' strokes, footwork, certain ticks and hitches and serves or running volleys so the staff can show the tapes to the kids instructionally, letting the kids see on the screen exactly what a coach or pro-rector's talking about. The reason being, it's a lot easier to fix something if you can see it.